This is the November 28th meeting of 2012 of the Commissioners' meeting, and we are being brought into session. So with that, we would like to rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if we could take a moment to remember those who have sacrificed their lives and those who are serving abroad for our country and freedoms. Thank you. Okay. Is there any public comment today? Seeing none, we are here to hear the Treasurer's Report by Mark Zielinski.
Thank you. Madam Chair, so you know that Pat is on her way to Florida today. Yes. She's on vacation. She had won in a charity auction a trip to Florida.
To Florida,
so that's where she's going. She mentioned San Marco, I think is where she's going.
Yeah,
San
Marco's lovely, just south of Bonita Springs, where my people go.
So that's where she is today. The Treasurer's Report, as you know, we do the Treasurer's Report every year, and it is a required report that we give to the state of Massachusetts. Let me give you a copy of it, and I have a couple extra for people if they're interested. And I gave this presentation a few weeks ago to the Assembly of Delegates. So that's the report itself.
There's extra copies.
Here's my little presentation that I did.
Thank you.
We were supposed to do this a couple of weeks ago here as well, and so the date I didn't bother changing. There's some extra copies if people are interested.
I think you've distributed this report before.
Oh yes, I definitely have. Yeah. Okay. So the Treasurer's Report comes out in August. You see it's dated August 28th. What's in it? Well, basically it's a comprehensive fiscal year-end picture of the county's finances. And it's sent to DOR, Local Services, every year. It's one of the only required submissions we have to DOR now. We used to have to do our budget as well, but since the sheriffs take over, we don't have to do that anymore. I mentioned it's done in August, September for the previous fiscal year. Every fiscal year we do that. And it's really a detailed statement of receipts and expenditures, and I'll go through some of those for you. It also includes a statement on our unpaid bills and any salary transfers that we've done throughout the fiscal year. And it also shows our debt service schedule. So this is a picture of fiscal year 2012 and all our receipts and expenditures. So
now this is the, does this take into account the year-end status, that fiscal year-end status as of June 30th?
It does. You'll see sort of the snapshot at the end of the year.
That's fiscal FY 2012, right?
2012 we're talking about, yeah. So this is for the period July 1st, 2011 through June 30th, 2012. The June 30th just passed. So just to go through, it's broken out by major funds, and at the county we have basically three major funds. The general fund, of course, the capital projects fund, we have a capital fund, and then the Cape Cod Commission fund. All other funds show both the beginning balance and the ending balance, and any transactions that occurred as in and outs for receipts and for payments on those. And the funds are all listed by category. And by category I mean appropriated funds for the county, local, state, or federal grants, and then the agency or other type of funds that we have. I'll go through a couple of those. And what it shows is it shows the beginning balance of each of these types of funds. It shows the receipts that were received for that particular fund throughout the fiscal year. That means any revenues that came in or deposits or any reimbursements, those types of things. And it shows the payments that were made from that fund. If you had to pay salaries or if you had to pay for services or any payments that were made. And then it shows the ending fund balance on that particular fund as of 6/30/12.
So here's the balance of 7/1/11.
So
I'm going back to page, I guess it's page 4.
It's like the third page in, or maybe the third page in. Yeah. So you see on the general fund, so it's the first page that's tipped sideways like that, looks like that.
Right.
You see the beginning fund balance on the general fund on 7/1/11 was $5,026,710.90.
Right.
And then below that, you'll see the budgeted receipts, so any of the receipts that we received in the general fund, and most of the big ones you'll notice. There's the county tax assessment, there's the registry of deeds, county excise tax amount, and then the other big one is the registry of deeds receipts, which is their business revenue basically. The other one that is a big number that you'll see there is the courthouse rental, $1,453,000. You'll see that there too. You see that?
Is this on the second page you're talking about?
It's the third page, Hugh, and it's the first page tilted landscape. That one, yep.
Oh, I get it.
So
Okay.
see right at the top?
I see where you are.
Yeah, maybe a
Thank you.
fourth of the way down, 5
Yeah.
million. Then you see some of
I
the
see the courthouse
receipts
rental,
numbers.
yeah.
Yep, courthouse rental.
Extension.
Just of those, then you see the total budgeted receipts. Then you see the appropriated expenditures. Basically, those are the department by department expenditures you see. You also see off under the capital projects column, whatever capital projects expended that year under the appropriated expenditures were. And you also see the column for the Cape Cod Commission. So you see the Cape Cod Commission revenues there as well. And we do that for each and every sort of, so that's the general fund is at the top. Then as you get through the general fund and you see the total appropriate expenditures, then you go into the other funds, and that's where you see the fund by fund, beginning balance, receipts, payments, and end of the year fund balance.
Before we leave the Cape Cod Commission, I think it's important for people to recognize that although it shows receipts under mitigation funds for the $283,000, that money is just held in an escrow account. It's not money that adheres to operating revenues.
Yeah, actually there's a separate fund set up for that, Bill, that you'll see going farther down into the report for any of the mitigation fund, because you're right, it's set aside for a specific purpose, so we have to use it for that. So, and I think in my report, there's just a couple that I draw examples to. The dredge fund is in here, and that's on page 1, 2, it's on the second page of the landscape report. You can see we began the year with $1,034,000 balance. We had receipts of $808,805.03. We had payments of $671,778.85. And we had an end of year balance of $1,171,000. Now that's not to say that we made $139,000 that year, because a lot of times billing and invoicing, all of it, and payment receipt, all of that will lag. So if we were to close the dredge fund and cease operations, we should end up with a positive balance, because we've been collecting a little bit more to put in a reserve fund to purchase another dredge when we get to that point. But there's always a lag time on items like the dredge fund and those types of funds.
Okay.
And the other one that I mentioned is the Mass in Motion grant, and that's under, so that's,
Is it human service? No.
it'll be under one of the grant categories. And it'll be under Human Services. Mass in Motion. It's on the it's on the fourth landscape page. About two-thirds down.
The landscape pages have a separate number.
They don't, no, and
Up
I
in the
apologize
right-hand
about
corner.
that. Oh, do they? I
Yeah.
can't see them. Oh, it's on page 4, yeah, it's
Yeah.
called page 4, if you can see it. So,
I see.
it says Mass in Motion. Actually, it's a new grant, so at the beginning of the year, we didn't have anything in there, and we received $45,000, spent $27,000, and we have a positive balance of $17,251. Of course, that's a much bigger grant than just the $45,000. I believe it's a $60,000 grant.
Yeah, it was a $60,000 grant.
So the remainder of that, and if it's, I think it.
But it's over a 5-year period. I mean,
Yeah,
I think
it's
it's,
over
yeah,
a
so
longer
so the
term
rate, yeah,
period.
so it makes sense that there's a balance here, because.
Yep. So there's all of those, and you know, I'd be happy to answer any questions on any of them. But sort of the point being is this particular report, the treasurer's report, is sort of an excellent soup to nuts accounting of all of the things that we do.
Right.
Many of which, because they're special revenue accounts or these grant contracts not subject to further appropriation, are off budget. So there's a substantial number of those types of things off budget.
There was a question when I had looked at this, I guess several months ago, about whether or not, when we were looking at reserve, that reserve that helped us accrue our capitalization expansion.
Yeah. Well, let me. Okay.
And the question is that since we are going for or anticipating having to develop some bonding or do some borrowing under a bond, that we're doing something to establish a let's say an opportunity to increase our bonding capacity. And I was wondering if that was part of your strategy in looking at the amount for the capital improvements reserve, because I see it's 224,000.
Yeah,
My recollection is that that our commitment is a lot higher than that.
Well, but don't forget, we've used that for the lab. That's why it's down to 224.
Okay.
Because we've made subsequent appropriations for the lab. I believe it was 900 the first time and 600 the second time to do the lab renovation project. So it was at $1.8 million at one point in time.
Okay.
And so we've drawn that money down.
Now,
Which is why we set it aside, because
Right.
we don't have to borrow it. We had it in cash. We were holding it in cash, and we can use that money.
Yeah, well, I recognize that. I always had a problem with the concept of holding, of establishing cash and not taking the opportunity to develop a bond capacity.
Right, yeah. I agree. I mean, if we had that money and didn't use it and we put it against a bond.
Well, for years, what we were doing is we always budgeted the same way. Your capital appropriations would be in the capital fund, and we still do that. And then for years, when we had a so-called surplus, we were using cash in the general fund to offset whatever expenditures at the end of the year we had from the capital side. So we didn't have to borrow. Actually, we're working on a borrowing now, because there's a number of things that we've done over the past 4 or 5 years that we have to borrow for, since we haven't had the cash.
And where are we on the complex up here?
We anticipate moving in January, February. So
Who?
Health lab.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right,
the lab.
All right, the lab will be all finished.
Yep. I hesitate because there's just a couple of things that they're putting sort of the punch list thing on. I have to sit down with Stephen Tebow and George and just make sure that we've got all our I's dotted and our T's crossed. I know there was some concern about, since John Blaisdell has left, what exactly from downstairs was going to be moved to upstairs, so we have to sort that out.
Yeah, and I do think that we need to have some sort of, with the jail, any further work we do up there.
The jail, yeah, we haven't done anything
I know.
with. Yeah, so we haven't
And that's
done anything
good. And
further.
I met Steve, actually when they were dedicating the bandstand here, he came over and introduced himself.
Yeah.
A very nice guy.
Yeah, he seems to be doing a good job.
Yeah, and he had some thoughts on the jail.
Yeah.
So I said, well, maybe once we have a chance to settle down,
Yeah.
we could do this. So I would like to maybe bring him in and maybe just.
Yeah. Well, I think what we should do is probably in I don't know, January. You'll see that's sort of budget review. But we should get up there, take a walk around the building. I've spent about a month since I've been up there,
Right.
so it's come a long way, and I know it looks really good. So.
Yeah. All right. So there's that. There's a couple of things at the end of this. There was a couple of other points I wanted to bring up again that we should revisit that we've discussed and we have to follow up on.
So Bill sort of raised the question about what's page 7. It's the final page of that landscape report. Really the meat and potatoes of the treasurer's report. And basically what you do is you get to the bottom line, and then you sort of set aside all the reserves that you need to set aside every year. And there's a number of them, and the first one, of course, is your encumbrances. You have a number of POs, purchase orders, that are out there that you haven't finished spending off of yet, and you set aside money for that. And we set aside 287, I think it's, $1,068,919.11. You see that number there. You set aside the statutory reserve number, which I should have mentioned, which is 10% of the county tax assessment. So that's $290,000. And you set aside the capital reserve, the continuing appropriations reserve, which is the $1,335,000. Those are projects that were started in the previous or other fiscal years that you haven't finished yet, but you still need the money to pay for them going forward. You don't have a PO in place yet. So those are all cash set-asides that we take from the bottom line and set aside. Then we also do an insurance reserve. We put some money aside for insurance, workers' comp, or whatever claims that we might have through our Maya insurance coverage. And so those are all your receipts reserved for appropriation, ones that we can set aside.
On the on the continuing, let's say, set aside for compensation, are we self-insurers?
Which one are you talking about?
When you just mentioned, you talked about
insurance reserve. No, we
Right.
have insurance policies, but you have deductibles, or you have those types of things, which is what that money is set aside for.
Okay. Remember, there had been a change in our coverage at one point.
Workers' comp.
Yeah, that's all.
When the sheriff was still here,
Right.
we were self-insured for workers' comp at that point in time. We had an excess policy, so that up to a certain point you're self-insured, and above that the insurance kicked in. But since that time we've moved to fully insured workers' comp under Maya. We've done it through Maya.
The Cape Cod Commission had a change in its insurance coverage at one point with regard to exposure for liability.
For land use planning only,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
And we have a separate policy for
All
that.
right. And what is the deductible on that at this, if you are aware of it?
5, I would say. 5,000.
5,000?
I believe so.
So it's not, at one point we were being threatened with a 50%, I think. In other words, they were only going to pay half. We would have exposure up to 50%.
Yeah, that was before we took care of all that with the separate policy.
Okay,
yeah.
so that has been resolved.
It's all been resolved.
Okay.
Yeah. It's been several
All right,
years.
so,
actually.
so these figures are representative of where we were as of June 30th, 2012?
Yes, yeah, as we close the fiscal year.
So we had a surplus at the
So-
end of the year?
So let me just finish.
Yeah,
So
please.
those are the monies you need to do what you've already started doing, basically.
Right.
So then you get to receipts reserve, another reserve section that we could make there called receipts reserve for appropriation, and that's basically a rollover into the next year's budget. Are you subsidizing next year's budget with last year's money? The answer is no. We haven't been doing that for several years.
Right.
We had been when we had a surplus, but we sort of weaned ourselves off of that. And it's a bad practice to get into because you sort of count on that year after year, and you don't have it anymore. So we
I'd
don't
like to
have
talk a little bit more about that because that seems to be a problematic area as far as understanding. The total revenue that we receive is the basis for the projection of expenditures that we make.
Right.
And in those terms, which part of this are what we might call the most predictable part, and which are the ones that we have to be concerned about vagaries in the revenue source?
Well, I think our expenditures are pretty predictable. That's
Well, the expenditures would be, because that's based upon what we anticipate getting for.
But even sort of
airport.
going into next year, you sort of know what you're going to spend. You might want to do a little bit more here, there, or as I've encouraged the department managers, that things are looking a little bit better. If there's really something that you haven't been able to do over the past couple of years that you want to get done, that you need some extra money for, now's the time to look at that. But in general, if you just said, no, we're going to have to just do what we've been doing, That's pretty predictable. So your expenditures are pretty predictable. And then to go back to your revenues, the courthouse rental, that's pretty predictable. We know what that's going to be. Most of the others are fairly small. The county tax assessment is absolutely predictable because you know what that's going to be from year to year. It goes up now 2.5%. Same with the Cape Cod Commission tax, the EPF tax. That's perfectly predictable. So the big ones that are the vagaries and they track sort of together are the excise tax and the deeds receipts. But we know that. That's
Right.
Okay,
We've been
that
through
that brings up another
Yeah.
another question in terms of what we have made decisions in the past not to deal with or not to support our unfunded liabilities. You know, for example, on pensions.
No, not on pensions.
What is GASB? Was it
GASB.
GASB, GASB.
GASB. What was the intent of GASB? Was that not to address
Well,
some of these issues?
they're on GASB 64 and 65, or 67 and 68. So you have to be a little more specific. I think you're referring to OPEB. Are you referring to OPEB? Other post-employment benefits?
Yes. That would be one of the
and
things.
there's I say this, Bill, because it's an important distinction. Because if you say that we're not paying our unfunded
I didn't say
liability,
that.
in,
No.
yes you did, in pensions, that's not right. It's wrong. And it causes a big stir, and that's one of the things under Mass General Law you have to pay. You have to pay your assessment, which covers your unfunded liability. And that's one of the things that when you read about these other pension systems in California or other places, that's a big distinction for the Massachusetts system. We're required to pay our assessment every year. Others sort of treat it, well, if I can afford it, I pay it. If I can't, I don't. And that's what gets you into these problems. So that one we're required to pay.
Thank you for correcting me on that. But the impression that that I have had, perhaps in reading, let's say some correspondence and perhaps even some things that I've seen in the media, are suggesting that we are cavalier with regard to.
Well, and that's exactly why I bring this to bear, because in this state we're not cavalier about it. Other places may be cavalier about it, and that's where they get into trouble. It sounds like it's time for me to bring back my pension presentation.
That wouldn't be a bad thing.
Again.
But all of that was, a lot of those corrections were made during this past pension reform, too.
No,
Are you tying it up? No, it was already done before that.
It was back in '88 that kind of put us all on a track where you had to pay your unfunded liability. It stopped being a pay-as-you-go system and started being a funded system. So it's time for me to go back to that. Let me go back to, I think what you're referring to is the OPEB, and this is GASB 43 and 45, where all of a sudden you are required to calculate your unfunded liability associated with other post-employment benefits. Really what that means is health insurance, dental insurance if you offer it. We offer dental insurance. It's health insurance. Because health insurance is on a pay-as-you-go system. You know how I figure out what the bill is for health insurance? I look at all the active employees for next year and I say, this is how much it's going to be. I look at all the retirees and I say, this is how much it's going to be. That's called pay-as-you-go. But me sitting in this chair, all the employees sitting in their seats being part of the employment, if I retire, there's going to be a liability associated with that. I'm creating a future liability. That's not being paid for, like it is with the pension system. Pension system's accounting for that, and we're paying for it. But that's not happening for OPEB liabilities. We know what they are. That's what GASB 43 and 45 required you to do. It required you to have an actuarial come in, look at it. We're doing it again. Remember, we do this through the retirement board for about 30 to 32 other municipal units on the Cape. We do it all at once. Since we're all in Cape Cod Municipal Health Group, we're all in that. We calculate it all at once, and they get their OPEB liability statement. Every 2 years we do that. So we know what it is. We haven't begun to fund for it yet. And we will have to. Yeah, we'll have to start that process.
Okay, but it's nowhere near the amount that has been suggested by some in terms of our exposure.
It is a large liability. It's been mitigated because now we always have been what was called the Section 18 of 32B. If you're eligible for Medicare, you get pushed onto Medicare. It's automatic. You have to do it. There's no choice by law.
That's in the.
But that
that's
used
in
to be an
retire-
option.
That's
That's
in
retired.
retirees.
As a well, whenever you're eligible, you could be an active
Yeah, you could still be
employee, and
working.
if you're eligible for Medicare, you're going to go on Medicare. So it's when you're eligible for Medicare, you go on Medicare. Now one of the reforms they passed was in the healthcare reform was that's automatic. So everybody in the state who's a municipal employee, if they're eligible for Medicare, they're going to be on Medicare. So that helps mitigate that liability because it pushes most of the primary coverage onto Medicare. But if you feel comfortable about that is a different question, but that's what's going to happen.
Okay.
All right.
But that liability, we know what it is, we haven't decided to fund it yet. And that's going to be a challenge. That's a challenge that we face.
Okay.
So to go back to this final page, what I didn't finish on page 7 here was I went through all of the sort of what do you need the cash for that you've already committed. But we do have in our latest, our charter iteration, a stabilization fund. We have a reserve fund that we put aside. We've pocketed these and pigeonholed them into the legal reserve, the insurance reserve, the unfunded pension liability reserve, and early retirement liability reserve. So we put some of that money aside. It's not as formal as required under the GASB rules for that, because they would require us to put it into a, this is a word, I can't remember the word. Basically, we could never touch it again. You'd have to use it solely for that purpose.
Right.
Put in there, it's basically fungible. You guys could say, you know what, we need 150,000 to do X, Y, or Z. So we could take that 150,000 and do X, Y, or Z with it. You have the ability to do that with those reserves what you like, subject to appropriation at the assembly, of course. You'd have to get it appropriated. So we have a reserve amounts. Those are the reserves. Then Bill, you mentioned also we have the capital improvements reserve. You mentioned that. You see it's at 224, almost 225. But we've drawn that down to use for the lab renovation. So,
Are we anticipating any other capital improvements based upon what your department managers are? Because when the facilities people come in over the years, they've brought up several projects that we need to address.
Oh yeah. There's going to be, I don't know when we will do it, but the parking lots are all going to need to be redone. That's, you just go walk over to the first district and you'll see. And then, unfortunately, underneath all the drainage, most of the drainage is probably 50 years old whenever we developed the site first. So all that's going to have to be done.
And when we do that, I think that in my opinion, we have to take a look at the improvements in permeable paving to see whether or not it would stay porous enough so they wouldn't have to worry about it, putting the money into that, so we'd have appropriate storm
Runoff.
We looked at that a couple of years ago.
I know, and at the
yes.
time, I think that we were told that after about a month in the wintertime.
You needed to get like a vacuum truck.
Right.
Because
well,
you had to suck the dirt out if it,
Yeah.
that didn't make sense to me, but anyways, we did look at that.
there
We
are
looked at
times of change.
But there may have been improvements, and I think that's
Right.
something that we should look at on a regular basis, because we can't pretend to be supportive of let's say, some of the initiatives on the Cape about reduction of pesticides and herbicides without taking a
Right,
look
right.
at the responsibility we have of maintaining
Right.
our own complex and as green a manner
Yeah, I
as
think
possible.
because FERTA do the permeable, I mean, even if you just drive on 495 in the rain, you can see some areas, you don't get any of the overspray and all that
Right.
because it's permeable. And then other areas, it's all over the place, so it makes a big difference.
Well, we have the planners over here. I mean, they
Exactly,
are
they
aware of
were
all
involved
the
last
new
time.
things, and
Yeah.
so we'll involve them with all of
The
that.
thing I didn't understand about the Mass Department of Transportation maintaining roads, they don't use Vector trucks. They don't have vacuums that go over those
Right.
roads. If they have permeable surface and it's not creating all this overspray, how do they do it and we can't do it? So that was the question that I didn't understand.
Yeah.
Well, another question with regard to that is the construction methods that they use on road paving in Massachusetts versus what they use in New Hampshire and other places sort of lend itself to capturing water, allowing for spalling and creating potholes. their technology has improved with regard to that. We
Right.
get told that when we go to these
Right,
transportation
your MPO
conferences,
meeting, yeah.
but then we don't seem to see that in the application phase.
Right. So,
Okay.
just go back to the bottom line, we're getting to the bottom line. Unassigned fund balance, so what did we end the year with, as you want to call your surplus? $6,876.24.
So we ended in the
Don't spend
black.
it all in one
Is that,
place.
is that
We
for
ended in the
Christmas Friday?
black.
Yep. Now, just before I leave the page and you kind of go on to the, over on the right, you see bank account balances. Now, this is the other nice little thing about this whole report, is so you have soup to nuts, in and outs throughout all of the county's activities for that particular year. Then you have the, as of the end of the year, 6/30/12, you know what their bank account balance is. So the number that you get above needs to tie to your bank account balance. And if it doesn't, then you've got an issue that you have to figure out. Why doesn't it? So you notice that they do.
So let me just, what is now?
That's just the now account. It's just the bank account that we have.
Okay.
So some are payroll accounts, some are the escrow accounts, like
Right.
Bill
The
mentioned.
septic, yeah.
That you
escrow,
know that you
lot.
have for the mitigation funds. So those are just all the bank accounts that we have with our
Yeah,
bank.
and then we have to separate them all out because you're
Yeah.
dealing with all these
Yep.
different.
Different
And of
things.
course, another
grants
question that comes up
projects.
from time to time is to, a commercial bank is very important for us to have with regard to managing, let's say managing the amount of money that we have. But from time to time, it occurs to me that, that using a bank that is part of, let's say, the community, is something.
Well, they used to be.
Yeah, I know, before they went to Canada. But, the point is that if we are supporting an economic development policy that is trying to contribute to the growth of,
And keeping
the
cash
growth
on
of our,
Cape Cod.
of our economy, and for those things that could provide, and this is a continuing issue with me, that could provide a support of livable income for the people that live here, I think we have to look at all of the parts where we place our money, all the parts where we put our money, so that we're doing everything that we can to ensure that the county, the Cape, and the people that are here are getting the maximum benefit of the taxpayer money that we accept from them to manage, let's say, to manage our responsibility on their behalf. So I hope that from time to time, that when we look at our relationship with the banks, that we take a look at how we are using our leverage to get an opportunity to look at local, let's say, local money management sources.
Well, there's only a couple left on the Cape, so.
Well, this
that
is part of the
problem?
issue.
Yeah.
Right, they don't do.
This is part of the
some
issue.
accounts.
Under the county's Mass General Law, or we're required to use, I can get the language for you,
Yeah.
but basically a commercial bank.
No,
So you run into this issue. Well, what's the definition of a commercial bank? It's defined in the statute.
Mhm.
So we've looked into this periodically with the interest of sort of looking at this bank or this local bank, or, and I don't believe they fit the definition.
And
Part of the problem.
I think the last time that we did look at it,
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time with you on that, and we were not able to identify one that met the definition that was based and owned locally.
Right, and so the issue comes up, the towns often have those other banking relationships, but they're governed by a different piece of the statute, so that's part of the problem. Now, we could look at changing that.
Right,
That's
and maybe even talk
possible.
to, if we're interested in a particular bank, talk to their attorneys and,
Or
Yeah.
or talk to Dan Wolf or Senator Murray or
Right.
someone to start the ball and say,
I don't think that would be a
Not a bad
bad
idea.
thing to do.
Yeah.
And
Right.
from time to time, I think that we should be proactive and responsive to what I'd say a legitimate request that let's say a legitimate interest that that commercial entities have here to let's say to have the support of the of the government that is supposed to be helping them get this stuff done.
So let me just finish through. So the next few pages after you pass the sort of meat of the treasurer's report are the documentation pages. Those just back up the numbers that you've seen in many of the places in the treasurer's report. I'm thumbing through those, and then the bank account information is there. Let's see, payroll deductions. You almost get to the end, and I'm trying to. There's the salary reserve transfers to cover any of our most of the COLA cost associated with that. It's not in every department because some have vacancies for whatever reason. So at the end of the year, I just cover all the ones that I need to cover. We do that when I give you in July. I'll give you the approvals of those transfers, so you'll have seen those. And then I just wanted to point out, sort of the last 2 pages, these are the debt service piece. And you see really what the only pieces that we have outstanding in debt service as of 6/30/2012 is our septic management, the betterment loan program stuff.
And that's a program that is self-sustaining, and I believe we're accumulating, which brings up a question we've raised before as to when can we begin to look at supporting small commercial.
George is bringing a proposal back. He's looking at that right now, so he's going to bring a proposal back to you guys to do commercial.
With the, okay, so this is what I wanted to talk about. I don't want that just to be say like, okay, this is a great idea and we're going to do it, because I was thinking about that money and about where we are in wastewater issues and, you know, alternatives and that. I'm not talking about all the money, but.
Well, there's not a lot.
No, there's not a lot, but if we took some of that, even 10, 20,000, something like that, maybe we should do a contest.
What?
Like a contest, like to MIT, or open it up like a global contest of, does anybody want to submit alternative septic systems innovations?
George gets those applications
I know
once a
he does,
month.
but if you really have people focusing that they're gonna get some sort of, like maybe through academics, universities, I don't know, I mean, it's something that we can discuss when George is here. So I just, when we do follow up on that, that was one of the things I think, you know, I was thinking about all the people who've come through, and then we said we're gonna come back on that. The septic surplus was one of it. And so it's just an idea. It can be, you know, I'm just throwing it out there
Yeah,
for
that's not a bad
somebody to
idea, Sheila.
discuss.
I'm recalling that the town of Harwich, for example, had a system put in place, and it was working perfectly. It was error.
It was a natural one that they did, right?
Yeah. But,
Yeah.
And it ran for, and then the bill came in, and the selectmen said, we're not going to pay it, and
Right.
then it went away. So there, but that was substantially more than $20,000.
No, I know,
Yeah.
and that's what everybody has to look at the cost. So like when we're figuring this out, I mean, these things are great, but where's the cost benefit? I mean, if we're trying to do a cost savings to taxpayers and fix the problem.
Just it is, because we just had a presentation, I don't think I told you, at the town managers meeting, from the gentleman in Falmouth who's doing an eco toilet. They have a pilot, and the reason they're doing it is they'd like to incorporate that into their comprehensive wastewater management plan, because it may have the ability to take off some of the other needs
Right.
that are more
Right, and that's
expensive.
what we're looking at, if we
That's
can have
exactly.
those
This
types
sort
of
of
things.
where you're trying to come up with alternatives that are less expensive in your.
And work.
And part of the thing you need to do, and they need to get data so that they can go to DEP and have DEP certify that that's actually going to take some of the nitrogen
Right.
out of
Is
the
Right.
stream. That's part of the
Dan
problem.
Patrick's thing?
Yeah, well, Matt's part. I mean,
Matt
he's
Patrick
pushed
does
it.
it.
I mean, he's
he
behind.
might be involved. This was when, I can't think of his name. He was very good. He was nice. He's been
Yeah, I
working with George.
regret that I missed that, yeah.
So.
Okay.
But anyways, there probably are some alternatives there. The only caution I will have is for the, you'll have to get a permission from Mass Water Pollution Abatement Trust that whatever you're trying to spend the money on is eligible to be spent.
I see, okay.
Well,
So
we
I
could
mean,
ask
it's
that
just,
question.
it's something we can,
You
we
could
can
ask.
look at it
Yeah,
and
once you
and see
have
what
a
I'm talking
program
about.
that you feel comfortable with, you can go to them and we'll ask.
Yeah, I mean, I just think maybe if we really, I mean, people come up with their ideas and go to George and have him test this out, but if
Yeah.
you really put out this thing where people are like, wow, this could help me with my student loan, you know, you get a team of these young people, or, and you know yourself, just from that conference that was held over at the Sheraton, you know, the energy conference and all of that. There are things going on all over the world that we could apply here. I mean, we're not, just thinking this stuff up on our own. I mean, people are really trying to put together things. So it's just an idea.
Well,
And
I think it's a useful idea to consider. The other piece is that we have George that's getting exposed to all of this. Maybe it's time to ask him, of the stuff that you've seen,
Right.
what do you have a list that says, this is pretty
Almost.
good, this is almost there.
Yeah.
This, stay away from this stuff. Maybe
Right.
that's a question we should pose to them.
Yeah, it would be, all right, so it would be good to have, like, to really kind of pull
I
together.
guess the
something.
way I'd phrase it is we've been doing the test center for 15 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
well,
haven't had the golden,
the
the
magic
golden
bullet.
solution.
Exactly,
The
right,
silver
because that
bullet
guy
hasn't-
would be rich and we
Yes.
wouldn't have this problem.
Right, yeah, this, I
if
know.
the silver bullet was out there.
Well,
Yeah.
it's all about the magic bugs and the fact
Yeah,
that
and it's also
pneumatic
about
need
the
to be
magic
created or destroyed.
Incentives,
And,
if
you know,
you really put people
and
focused.
the environment that we exist in up here gets cold, it gets hot, both of
Right.
those things.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a wide extreme. It's not always 72 degrees. You know.
Right.
Well, that's the whole concept behind heat pumps, for example, when, air, using air as a plenum,
Right.
was that it worked fine below the Mason-Dixon line.
Right, when
but
it's
it didn't
72
work at all
degrees,
up
it worked
here.
great.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And the fact that it always stays above 32 degrees in the wintertime most of the time, up here it didn't work.
So there are
Okay.
things that work, there are things that work better, but nothing is a panacea.
Yeah, nothing
But on
really
the list
does
of-
more than
a list of
50%,
things
70%
that we asked George to
of the time.
respond to, perhaps that would be one of the things we'd ask him.
Okay, so is there any other?
So that's the treasurer's report. In a nutshell, I think the
All right.
assembly was happy with the presentation.
And I am going to put on that if we, once we look this over more closely and Pat is on here, that there's going to be an opening, a future meeting if we wanted to bring it up and ask questions on
Yeah,
it. So,
sure.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
we
anytime.
really have a
I'm here
chance to-
most of the time.
Yeah,
I
I
know.
heard that, yeah.
and it would be good to go over that pension thing again, maybe.
I
So
will.
we should
I'll
put that,
bring
yeah,
that
it's not-
back.
It's not like next week, but somewhere just as a refresher course as we're going into the budget
Yeah.
period and,
Yeah.
okay.
I'd
Because
like
I
to-
actually think the pension story in this state is a good story. It's most of the pensions that people receive, they pay themselves, so it's a good deal for the taxpayer. And we're on a we're on a track to pay down our unfunded liability.
Well, if that's it,
It is it.
I'd like to move the, we have, I'd like to
Do we have
move
the minutes of our previous meetings here, do we?
Yeah, I'd like to move those,
I know they were sent to you, yes.
yeah. I didn't see it.
I didn't see anything.
Unless Kara has something specific that, to point out a specific change.
I wasn't
in the
there
minutes.
yesterday, last week.
For October 24th, those were given to you, but they weren't ready yet, so
Okay,
information on public comment and other than the actions were added in there.
all
So I
right.
needed a revised vote. or
And
a
I
vote on
wasn't
a revised
technically at that meeting. I
But you
read
missed
the
that, didn't
time.
you?
I was coming in as it was, I thought it was starting and it was, it
No,
was ending.
this was prior, this was happened
week
when I was on
before.
vacation.
Oh, okay.
Barbara sat in for me and the
Right,
minutes
those
weren't
are-
completed yet, she didn't present you guys with the completed final version, so.
So that's not on the list. Okay, so
Okay,
Okay, I
so you
moved
want to
it.
just hold those?
we
or-
will hold those for next meeting?
Yeah,
They'll be
sure.
ready by next week?
No, they are ready. I'm
Oh.
sorry, when you voted on them, Barbara was here, you voted on them, but they weren't complete. So now the minutes that are in your folder, I'll need a vote today to approve the amended minutes.
All right.
So they are
Oh,
now
okay,
complete.
gotcha.
Okay,
And I didn't see anything in the amended minutes, that goes to the level of contract.
okay, yes, and I didn't either. All right, so
And just
this
to
one's
note,
ours.
I have one thing actually, because you guys already approved it last week or the week before. Number 11, it's the EDC stuff, the appropriations for their stuff. It's 354, but you already did, there's a backup in your package. You already did the marketing expenses, because I had a bill from marketing from the chamber that I wanted to get paid, so you guys already approved that amount. So I just note that, the 354 is fine, but you're just noting that you've already approved the marketing expenses.
Okay, so you'll put that into the minutes?
Yeah.
So we will,
So if that's the case, we haven't had a vote on the minutes. So
no, we haven't had a vote on the minutes, so
I moved the minutes.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
And on our summary of items with the
With the,
addendum
Notated,
that,
yeah.
all right,
or change that you just.
I'll move them then.
And I second. All in favor?
Aye.
And I do not believe that there is anything else.
Okay, other than signing,
And we
I
will
don't
just
have
sign.
anything to offer other than it was a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Yes, it was very lovely, and
I just have, I can hand out to you guys, and I'll send it electronically, your upcoming meeting schedule.
Oh, good.
oh, good, thank you.
So if you would pass that. Includes the budget review schedule, so if you have any issues with that, let me know.
Okay, so still doing Wednesdays, not doing any extra days.
Not at this point in time, because we actually have an extra Wednesday in January. It's
Yeah, that might be a good day
But we will be-
to really dig in and.
You will
Yeah.
be doing budget.
Next week, I mentioned the WIB update, which will be one of our,
Agenda items.
yeah, that's the only agenda item I have now. And I left a message with David Augustino, start time. I mentioned 1 o'clock, but if you guys want to do 2, it's an assembly day, I don't know what you want to do. So I said that's the only unknown I have right now.
I don't believe Pat is gonna be here next week.
No, she's not.
She's not.
Okay, so
Just the
what
two
is
of us.
good for you?
What,
2 would be,
what's good
2
for
is
you?
fine for me, if that's fine for you, and then we could just roll, it will be 2 hours, will give us before the
My
assembly.
feet are like wings of Friday.
Alright, so,
Whatever you
alright,
like.
alright, so let's make it
Okay,
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
Unless
Good.
he can't do it at 2, if he has to make it, let us know,
I,
but
I think he was okay, but we'll do
All
that,
right.
and I'll let you
So
know.
2 p.m. on the
2
5th.
PM on the 5th.
Now, there was a question that has been raised by some constituents about, do we need to have an agenda item scheduled for completing the report? It's been brought up several times. This is
Yes.
Pretty
the,
wonderful.
Treasury,
not the treasurer's report, this is the
special.
special, let's see, the special committee as well as the response to the MMA.
I think
Report.
once you get to the point where you have adopted, you know, the big question, I think, is the reorganization recommendation. So you have to say, what are you gonna do with that? And once you get to the point where you know, and you take a vote, then yeah, I will amend my report to include that. And I think a key piece of this, but that's yet to be determined, is what's the process going forward? How do you want to
I'd like to
engage whatever you
I'd like
have
to
decided?
suggest, because I know this is very important to Pat,
It is,
okay,
And
that
it's to
perhaps
me
that
as well.
we tentatively schedule on December 12th
I agree,
a discussion of that, because she'll be back by then.
yep.
And it'll be on the agenda, and it would be timely in terms of getting it completed by the end of the year.
Yeah, and that meeting might need more time, so,
It might need more time. I'm not here that day. I have the collective treasurers meeting that I have.
But nevertheless, I think that we need to at least begin to address it.
I agree, and I think also that if Pat is coming back a week from today, we should be a little
She's not gonna be
flexible.
here on the 5th.
Right, she won't be here on the 5th, so on the 6th or 7th, we can speak to her. Maybe we might even want to add a date or change the date where you can be available if we need you there. And,
All right, let me
'cause it
talk to
would
her.
be-
I will, I'll talk to her.
All right.
And give us notice as far as availability. So we can make sure that we are available. It's very important, and I know that, there's, in my opinion, there's a need to resolve this. And
I agree.
And it's a piece of paper that we need to get off our desk.
It's a piece of paper we need to get off our desk, and it's also a piece of paper that if we're gonna take action, we gotta start working on it, so. I mean, we can't be fooling around with this anymore.
All right, so you'll look into that?
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay, great.
okay, good.
All right, that's the only comment that I
All right.
had.
So, all we have is the summary of items. We voted on those?
We voted on those.
Yes, okay.
And so I'd like to, I haven't seen nothing else. I didn't, do you?
The only thing I have to tell you is that I've met with Otter Cape Health a couple of times, Sally Dean and members of her staff. They've gone through a lot of different ups and downs down there in the Outer Cape, and I was very involved with Outer Cape when I first came to, when I first moved here. And so we're calling back in, they've gone through different transitions, getting it together, they're there now. And they have a site, their catchment area by federal law is from Harwich down, because they service the more needy as opposed to hospitals and that sort of thing, they're a community health center. And with the new community health centers being brought in with the health reforms going on, there's all different opportunities and pushes for these community centers to take on what they're supposed to be. So they're finally able to now, feel very comfortable about where they are, and now they can start looking at where they can partner. So they called me up, I met with them, and then these were on Saturdays, I asked Beth to come down, and we met with several people of the board and the CEO there. So I do think that it's good news that the Outer Cape is finally able to start really looking at what their community health center can do. I think that there might be a little bit of even though that there isn't a conflict, there might always feel that way with Cape Cod Hospital Group or, you
Yeah,
know, health group.
Fontaine is in Harwich.
Yes, but
And
they
moved
do
from
not
and I think Lower Cape moved
service,
from Orleans
they don't
too.
take Mass Health. This, yeah,
Really?
right, so this would be almost like, well, we can't help you, but go right over there.
But Fontaine is part of Cape Cod Healthcare.
Yeah, but there's, you know, there's some restrictions there, that's what I'm told, so,
I'll bring
anyway.
that up, as you know, I'm on that Family and Patient Advisory Committee at
Right.
Cape Cod Hospital.
Right.
I'll certainly bring that up.
Yes, so let's talk a little bit more before get
Yeah.
all your information straight before you bring that up, and then we'll
Thank
we'll
you,
talk
yeah.
about that. But I am very happy about it, and they're really kind of getting it together down there, and we certainly need services all the way down because we just, you know, it's very remote. So anyway, so that's the only thing I have to report on is
Then I move to
for
adjourn.
the progress. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you everyone.